Welcome to the Paranormal Sideshow. I'm your host, John Edwards, and joined as always by my lovely wife, Stacey.
Hello.
And we are wanting to say how do you do? Welcome to everybody watching out there, and especially you guys on Paranormal Television. Hope you're enjoying this stuff. We've got a special one for you today.
Yes, we do.
Special one for you. I don't care if you're watching us. I don't care if you're listening to us on the podcast, EWO, and all that stuff. However you're taking us in, you're going to take it all today because this one is special. And it's a special edition, if you will.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. But I first have to do a little bill paying. And that would be saying, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like. Subscribe, share it with your friends, break into your granny's house, put it on her computer. She'll never know. Now, what you don't want to do is join us on Patreon through your granny's account, because then I'll get in trouble for telling you to do that.
That's right.
But you need to do it yourself, because patrons get a lot more benefits than what, the normal muggles get, including extra long episodes. So if you like what you hear, you like what you see, then you get a little bit more. And that's not it. You also get some behind the scenes stuff. And when we're on investigations and whatnot, especially the whatnot.
That's right.
We like to bring you a little bit more of that. The way you do that is patreon.com/Paranormal Sideshow. But of course, we're available audio-wise. If you're watching us right now, you're like, man, I really wish I could listen to these guys all the time. And you don't have a YouTube app or whatever. I know, right? We're available on all the little things. iHeartRadio, Audible even, Pandora. Spotify, Apple, Google, all that good stuff. We're everywhere.
Everywhere you can find your favorite podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do become people's favorite. We're like the Tom Brady of podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
Well, it is. It is. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's hands down the best cup of tea.
There you go.
Just say that's not even my
very good analogy,
dude. I shouldn't say what I'm a fan of. Like when you want to have people not triggered, and that we're big on not triggering. Right. That's something else. If you're new to us, we like to not trigger. So we like to not say I'm a lifelong Dolphins fan. Of course, I usually just get people feel sorry for me. Like,
yeah,
okay. And then there's the majority of the people that don't even follow sports or whatever.
That's true.
So, folks, we got a big one today because there's going to be some times I hate to read things. And when I'm doing these shows, I like to do it off my edumacation. I like to do it off things that I already know, and I know dates, and I'm a big history buff, and not saying I'm great at it, but I'm a big history fan.
Right.
Okay? The whole thing with this is I do not like to watch something even when somebody's sitting and reading it when, it's like, come on, man, give me the gist, give a little emotion into it, whatever. It's just a bullet point kind of guy. And with that said, what we're going over today, there's a lot to it. And you kind of have to stay on that course because there's so many twists and turns. And it's that way, I think, on purpose.
Right.
I think that the powers that be put a lot of twists and turns.
Well, right, because we're trying to hide it.
Right.
Yeah, so.
And it's controversial.
It is.
So we're going to form all this in a Jeopardy type of paranormal. This is going to be in the form of a question. Hopefully, you can all get your own answers because I'm going to talk about our stolen history. And there's no more blatant way to put it than the fact that I believe our actual human history has been robbed from us. I think that it's blatantly obvious in front of us everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean literature. I mean in archaeological finds, in historical documents. I mean, everywhere we go in teachings and the way that we conduct ourselves in this world. It seems there's something more. There's something we're missing. And sure, you might say, it's a missing link or what? No, not like that. There's something more. There's something that doesn't add up, and I can do the easy ones, right? Everybody knows the easy ones.
Right.
And we'll get to that. But like Egypt, right? Egypt I'll touch on it. Why is the oldest, Great Pyramid, any of the oldest structures in Egypt, why are they the best? Why does it start out so well constructed and it just gets worse?
Just gets worse as you go along.
Everything's like that. And we have this whole network around the world of these monolithic, megastructures that were well beyond any capabilities that we had as human beings at the time period they said that they were built. And even the time periods that they say they were built, that doesn't add up either. It really doesn't. They would still be working on some of these things with their little, windy spoon. It's hard to build with a spork. Just saying. But some of these things seem like they go back way further. And so everybody's like, where's the evidence? Well, here's the thing. The evidence is actually there. It's really there. And someone's like, well, it's some maverick, blah, blah, blah. No. Au contraire. It's actual university-funded geologists and archaeologists and paleontologists.
It's not the stuff they put in the textbooks and teach you in school.
Right.
That's the point.
Right. They don't put it in the books. And the books is another big part of this. When I talk about the stolen history part of this, it's the books that we don't see. And it's the parts of the books that we have that worry me, what's missing. So we're going to get into that. I'm going to dive into this. Like I said, some of these parts I am going to read just to stay on course, but hopefully we'll make this somewhat fun for this trip because, at the end of this thing, you're going to be grabbing your pitchfork and you're politely going to be assembling in the town square to help me march on the magistrate around here. We still have those, right?
I don't think so. But, shenanigans. You can always declare shenanigans.
We can declare shenanigans. We're on in Boston. We can definitely declare shenanigans in Boston. Sometimes the story you begin with just isn't what you end up with. With research, it just seems to go that way more times than not. We make it important to never force a topic of conversation and rather let the story do the talking. And this time, boy, howdy, did it ever get weird. And what started as a simple research into books, manuscripts, and scrolls of purportedly unknown origin, mysterious backgrounds, undeciphered, or just out of place, what I ended up with is a subject that I feel we will touch on today and absolutely keep working on researching, requesting information, and even some deeper dive investigations due to the 10 hours I've spent consumed in this research. You see, I'm a huge proponent of the fact that we as a society have no actual idea how long we've been around, who came before us, why we lost that knowledge, and why, only a select few seemingly have the answers. And what would possess a worldwide conspiracy of keepers of the keys of the truth to not give it up to all humanity? What possible secret could be so salacious or mind-bending, earth-shattering, end of days, that you would feel compelled to hide knowledge that all of us should have the right to read, see, explore, and decide on for ourselves? A little spoiler alert. You guys had proper UFO leaks last year and essentially said, yeah, laddie, not it. No idea who it is. Not ours, matey. And nobody really gave a damn anywhere close to the levels they should have. They essentially said, hey, UFOs are real. And barely a peep, guys. Strange, huh? When you think about it. I believe it's well past time for us to see up inside that Sphinx. Have open access to the Vatican Library with researchers that we choose. And while we're in Vatican City, we can possibly get someone to discuss why we found it so necessary to burn a dramatically horrifying amount of ancient historical books and scrolls, throughout time. There are many theories out there in the realm of what some proper historians may refer to as pseudoscience, and that's a term that me and Stacey completely despise, as much as we do conspiracy theorists, due to both being labeled to free thinkers, as in the case with conspiracy theorists. It was a term that was fed to the New York Times during the Warren Commission's time of looking into the murder of JFK, which is the granddaddy of them all for most researchers. The Times carefully placed again this terminology that helps shape an agenda just exactly as they do every day, and to this very day. They get called out, and somehow they always seem on FBI speed dial to carry out the propaganda of the highest degree. And as long as we can watch our big game or vote that bitch Jenny off the island, we have the illusion of freedom and independent thought, and it's only an illusion. There's just some things that make you go, and sometimes they come from the most benign locations. I don't know about how many Arthurian legend lovers we have out there, but it's a rabbit hole all its own. Anyone who listens to the show and has listened to the show for a long time, you know that we've touched on this before, because people that studied Arthurian legends, they've had some crazy experiences, including some Mothman type experiences and some Men in Black type experiences and such things. But why? Why would that even happen for something so really, so silly, really? I don't know. After 2 years of hard work, scholars have now finished an old French to English translation of a centuries-old manuscript that tells of the adventures of Merlin the Magician, King Arthur, and other well-known characters from the legendary Arthurian tales. The 13th century Merlin manuscript was discovered by chance in 2019, and we covered that on our show, hidden inside the pages of an entirely unrelated book. No one is certain how it got there, but its translation has revealed new details about the original versions of some of modern literature's, favorite tales. One of the lesser discussed, but yet still favorite parts of mine, concerns Morgana. Also called Morgan, she's a staple in the Arthurian legend. Her relationship to Arthur varies greatly. I mean, she goes from being his half-sister to, this, that, wiffle ball bat. There's a lot of different things and different story. I think they always fit her in where they need to. And usually she's a heel, though. She's a bad guy,
Yeah, generally. But she's still one of my favorite characters.
Well, of course she is. Yeah, Morgan Le Fay, man. She is pretty amazing, and I agree with you. I mean, she's been in such stories like Thomas Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur and Sir Gawain and The Green Knight, which, that movie, by the way, if you haven't seen the most recent movie of that,
so good.
Go out of your way.
It's very good.
Out of your way to see it. She often lurks on the fringes of the Arthurian court, plotting its downfall. In Le Morte d'Arthur, she steals Excalibur and gives it to her lover, intending that they overthrow King Arthur and rule his palace, thwarting the scheme. Arthur recovers the sword, but she steals its magical scabbard, which has healing properties, indirectly contributed to Arthur's fatal wounding in his final battle. There's fights with Guinevere and this and that. Like I said, she's got in the Green Knight, she sends the Green Knight into Arthur's court in the hopes that Queen Guinevere will be frightened to death. But in earlier tellings of the Arthurian story, Morgan is far more benevolent. She's described as the most beautiful of 9 sisters who rules Avalon, the Fortunate Isle. She also has healing powers and can shapeshift and fly. After Arthur is wounded at the Battle of Camlann, he is brought to her for healing. Far from plotting his downfall, she promises that she can heal him. Often linked to various supernatural female characters of Celtic mythology, Morgan is also called Morgan Le Fay, or the Fairy, hinting at otherworldly origins for her character. Yet in late medieval depictions, she is more associated with evil ambition and sexual immorality. Obviously, Morgan Le Fay was changed over the years to better reflect the church view of magic, women, and the very inaccurate depictions of witches or healers or seers. I come from a school of thought that if you lie to me about $1, you're going to lie to me about $1 million. It's not as much the amount as much as controlling the knowledge and shaping your version of reality to maintain ultimate power.
Right.
Ever wonder how wild it is that one of the greatest world powers of all time in Rome would fall around the same time that the church in Rome would flourish, grow, expand, and dominate the globe? Maybe that's a good story for another day, but it's still very much related to some of these specific organizations. In a truly fascinating work by Anatoly Fomenko, History, Fiction, or Science, he discusses much of what I'm barely touching base on here. In another very Morgana-type incident, you've got a little bit of question out there as to what even happened with not only some of our books, some of our biggest works of literature, but even our time itself. The timeline was created and agreed upon with Joseph Scaliger. It's a lot of work here that goes into this, and I do implore you to take a look at the Anatoly Fomenko work yourself, History, Fiction, or Science, because it's interesting. Is it not?
It is. Yes, definitely a huge rabbit hole.
It is, and it's almost too much of a rabbit hole. So it's just a question.
It will open your eyes.
Essentially, imagine calendars and what makes things fit correctly with the older calendar, with the newer calendar. They measure time differently through pharaohs and, through nations. And so this was getting everything together, but there's just some questions there. And when stuff is missing to fit, I don't know. I don't even know if I agree with it, but it does raise some incredible questions. Other than that, it raises questions about documents themselves, about literature throughout time. And especially when you get to things like the Society of the Flemish Jesuits, who issued 53 text documents between 1643 and 1794. And they were based on books that mysteriously vanished in many library fires after the exact copies were made. Just
that's not suspicious.
Crazy. And more brazen than that was the Order of Saint Benedict, who are actually well known and widely accepted to have changed parts of humongous numbers of volumes that they copied to fit better with 17th century ideals. Now, who's to say, why do I want you to tell me what that 17th century ideal is, sir? Give us the original document, or at least have it put somewhere safe. But those also, mysteriously vanished or got burned. And that included 221 ancient Latin books with, Roman, and over 100 and some Greek ones. So ancient Greek texts that are no longer around, that were historical documents that they copied for us.
So this is the order of monks, right? The Benedictine monks.
Right. The Order of Saint Benedict.
And they were the ones tasked with copying the books, because that's how they did it back then.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of different ones that did it throughout time, but they all kind of went back to the same deal.
Right.
Of, we're going to copy these. The originals are blasphemous, they're dangerous. And when certain countries under a certain power would go into, spread the gospel, if you will.
Right.
A lot of times they would go to burn the books, the banned books. There's a huge list of banned books, and those banned books would be burned, and anybody who had them and the authors that wrote anything else, those would be burned, or the people would be burned. Or
right. Like, yeah, you just said like the author that wrote a book they thought was controversial, they would just burn everything that author
they did
had written.
Right.
Sometimes the author was burned. Yes, it's awful.
Yeah, so the problem with this, aside from the obvious,
right,
is what happened to that history. Why was it so dangerous? What was so dangerous about this history that you can't be, even know about it? It's very strange. And it gets us to a big point, because a lot of people are like, nah, how did that even happen? Or what would that do? Well, I'm going to tell you what that would do. We'll dive into this deeper momentarily, but when you don't have the knowledge, I don't know how much people really put thought into this anymore. But if you go back to ancient Greece, you've got mathematics of a high degree. You've got people realizing that the earth was round. It was so much knowledge, and you go just not even 1,000 years. I mean, you've got people thinking the earth's flat. You're basically dark ages, right?
Right.
Everybody's morons. Most everybody, except for people that have, a basement full of knowledge probably. But in all these libraries, again, that got burned, what was in there? And we're going to touch on a little bit of that. And even some of the books that may have survived these fires being mysterious to us now. But what are they telling us? Maybe that language we don't understand could be, very well understood had we the documents to do it. Guys, we exist at a very unique time in history. For a population so well educated and informed that we seemingly allowed ourselves to quickly go from independent thinkers and problem solvers into a rapid descent into accepting a narrative spoon-fed to us with our daily bread. Inside the span of just a few short years, we have went from doing simple math in our heads, remembering a great deal of numbers and knowledge to relying on the calculators that connect it to our bodies 24 hours a day. Rather than researching through libraries and home encyclopedias for answers, we simply ask our little AI companion and then accept the answer it's given to us. Now, this is perhaps nothing more than an insignificant condition of high technology. We sacrifice the abilities of our children to gain what many of us feel to be vitally important social skills in communication, overcoming obstacles, forming one's own opinions based on their own personal research and theories. But we gain so much extra time. And what do we do with that extra time? We make videos, lip sync it to a song that was created without using any real instruments. Save that small piece in the middle, sampled from a time period when all bands played instruments. We then upload tens of thousands of the same video using our little 24-hour calculator device to TikTok or whatever and show what an individual we are. Isn't it fun? I'm sure it is. Will it survive if a major cataclysm knocks out all our power grids for a few years and we all go walking dead on each other? More than likely, no. But hey, at least there should be many statues of us to remind future generation, and oh, never mind. We won't even go into any of that. The point I'm trying to make is this. Based on the current scientific narratives, the human beings that look like, human beings, like us, have been around perhaps a couple 100,000 years. I mean, that's stretching it. They want to absolutely argue that, but they also want to say we had a 5-head and mouth-breather kind of face, and hunted and gathered for a bloody long time with the very few marks left on this world up until about 10,000 years ago. Give or take a couple thousand years, you know how it is. But then how do you explain that when we do start building, we start with some pretty freaking quality beginner's luck, right? I mean, we make some rudimentary tools and get pretty next level in places like Göbekli Tepe. Or even fast forward, so they say, a few thousand years and give us the Great Pyramid. Heck, we can just stay in Egypt if you want to and watch as everything starts out incredibly more advanced and then it ends up like a pile of turds. In fact, the ancient megalithic precision-cut polygonal stone structures that just strewn around the globe all willy-nilly should make every independent thinker amongst us stand up and say, now hold on a damn second, what? How is it that never mind, there's a new fad I need to jump on. My whole theory with lost knowledge can literally be seen happening around us today. The very fact that I used to have half a phone book of numbers from my friends stored in my head, and now I'm lucky to remember my own cell phone number, is one part of how technology that, is making me dumber. And it also makes me suspicious of, if not being the first time we've possibly placed too much faith in the machines. But for an even better example that is indisputable as far as I'm concerned, falls directly with how bloody brilliant the ancient Greeks were compared to the human beings of the Middle Ages, just like we were just talking about. It's insane to imagine that the earth, that's the part that I keep going back to. We knew it wasn't flat in BC, and then directly back to knuckle draggers a few hundred years later and after the fall of Rome. Well, the fall of the blatantly political power of Rome, as I'm pretty sure we just changed outfits, moved across town, and continued to rule the world, control the narratives, and shape the paradigm for the past 2,000 years. In the absence of a paradigm, all the facts that could possibly pertain to the development of a given science are likely to seem equally relevant, according to Thomas Kuhn in 1996, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Kuhn also said normal science often suppresses fundamental novelties because they are subversive of its basic commitments. With a paradigm in place, there is some basis for judging evidence. It's the accepted narrative. And so every university subscribes to said narrative, and through the evils of preconceived mindsets, we seemingly have everything fit into these windows or, ignore it. The narratives on everything are written for us now, and boy, oh boy, do we eat them up, yum. But surely someone somewhere has to know the truth, right? And if so, wouldn't these somebodies wield quite the sword of knowledge and power? The pen is mightier than the sword, according to English author Edward Bulwer Lytton. And that has a great deal of truth to it. But that pen is only as mighty as the parchment that it's written down on, and subsequently burned in town squares for being blasphemous. So, like I said, the whole thing with that is when they're taking the knowledge, they're controlling the knowledge, they're controlling the narrative, they're There's something they're worried about getting out. And I did want to focus on some of the books that may have survived. Oh. I mean, they could just be mysteries. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it could be nothing to do with any of this. But you got to look at things like the Codex Gigas, right?
Right.
The Devil's Bible.
Love that one.
I mean, it's insane, really. And everybody knows about the Devil's Bible.
Well, of course, we've talked about it before on our show. It shows up in lists of mysterious books, and the story behind it is just so intriguing.
Well, let's tell you about that.
Okay.
The Codex Gigas literally means giant book, and it was created in the 13th century, purportedly, and thought to have been created in a Benedictine monastery. It is one of the largest medieval manuscripts in the world, being bound in wooden boards, covered in leather, made of more than 160 animal skins. And it is so heavy that 2 people are needed to lift it. It measures 36 inches tall and 20 inches wide, and almost 9 inches thick, weighing in at 165 pounds. Originally, the codex was comprised on 320 pages using donkey skin, but at some point, 10 pages were removed. It's thought that they were the Rule of St. Benedict, a guide to living the monastery life in the 6th century. However, according to popular myth, the missing pages actually contain an apocalyptic text known as the Devil's Prayer, which was intentionally removed to avoid the destruction of the world. Now, I firmly believe my own theory that, you know, in some text you would see the devil is also knowledge and, you know, represent with the apple and the tree of knowledge. And perhaps these 10 pages that they're saying was the Devil's Prayer were 10 pages of the ultimate knowledge, you know, because it was supposed to be all of man's knowledge up until that time. That was the deal. And I'll get to the deal he made. But
right. When this is also the Benedictine monks, the ones we've already talked about, decided what to leave in and leave out of books.
Yeah. I mean, and also the name comes from something I don't think is as strange as what some people do. The large devil that's drawn, that you always see the picture of this large devil that's drawn on one of the pages. The only thing strange about this, because there's a lot of heaven, hell representations around that time. And a lot of times, you know, that people don't ever say, well, on the other page is a heaven representation. Right. But here's the weird thing. The difference is heaven's on the left side in the Devil's Bible. Most of the time, you know, left-hand path, all that. Right. You'll see the devil represented on the left, if there's a left and right.
Right. And then the heaven would be on the right. So in this Bible, there is a heaven picture on the left-hand side. Yeah, it's completely opposite of the devil, but it's the very strange part for me was the fact that the devil was on the right. Right. So very strange. Now, as legend goes, it's believed that everything within the book was handwritten by a single unknown monk due to the uniformity of the writing. The National Library of Sweden puts this huge undertaking into perspective. And it tells, you know, if the scribe worked 6 hours a day and wrote 6 days a week, this means the manuscript could have taken 5 years to complete. If the scribe was a monk, he may have only been able to work for 3 hours a day, and this means the manuscript could have taken 10 years to write. As the scribe may have also ruled the lines to guide the writing before he began to write, it probably, you know, took several hours to rule one leaf. This extends the period it took to complete the manuscript. The scribe also decorated the manuscript, so this means the manuscript probably took at least 20 years to finish, and it could have even taken 30. This is particularly impressive as the handwriting shows no signs of deterioration or being influenced by age, disease, or the mood of the writer, never deviating whatsoever throughout the vast tome of text. Again, this supposedly could have taken up to 30 years to write, and it never deteriorates in writing. Whoever wrote it was the same, scientific, proven, the same person throughout the entire script. And it's a fact that with age, just like our voice changes, our knees get weak, all that good stuff. You can see, a handwriting expert can see, a half-ass expert can see.
it changes. I mean, go write yourself a couple of pages and see how it looks by the end of those.
Right.
It's going to change, right?
Oh, yeah, because your hand gets tired, and yeah, it's definitely going to not be the same.
The whole story is pretty insane. And, it does have the Bible in it. It has all the human knowledge up until that point. And it's got some weird things in there, too. Don't get me wrong. There's some pretty strange little pieces in there, and you need to go look at it for yourself. Of course, nobody knows what the true origin is. There was a monk that supposedly made a deal with the devil to get it done in one night, and it got done in one night, supposedly. But
that's
regardless,
the story, Well, and think about this. I know you're like, the last 10 pages are missing, and maybe it's this. They're saying maybe it's this kind of prayer, or maybe it's that. These pages are 3 feet tall. There's more than just one thing on those 10 pages.
Absolutely.
There's books worth of information.
Absolutely.
Probably on those, because it's front and back, correct?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of stuff that they took out of the end of the book. And the end is always, the big part, right?
Right.
Like the climax, the get you scene.
What people hope.
So I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of books out there that, not many as weird as this or as mysterious as this, but just imagine if they were going through their little literature burnings and left out a few, you would have things like the Buenas manuscript show up.
That's right.
Nobody understands it. They try to say every now and then, it's kind of like Stonehenge, we're figuring it out. Mm-hmm. But,
Well, they just go to their fallback because they can't figure it out. It's obviously a hoax.
Well, yeah. In the latest, we had a German, Rainer Haining, believed to figured out how to translate it. And it came up with some good, several different languages, that it might be. And I hope that it gets translated.
Right. It would be nice to know. I think that the theory that it's like a manual for some kind of like a women's manual or a medicine manual, I think that's probably what it is, because it has all the plants in it and it has all like
strange plants,
directions and stuff.
It does. We've never seen.
Well, I'm not saying it's from Earth specifically, but I'm just saying,
maybe from inner Earth.
Oh.
Or an ancient Earth from another time of man.
Right, because it would have been different.
It would have.
Kind of plants
like
and
Middle Earth.
Animals. Yeah, absolutely.
You got strange books like the Book of Soya, which, is a book of magic, good old John Dee and Queen Elizabeth I and all their alchemy, all their good stuff. But
that's just all kinds of weirdness.
Oh my God. The books, we could do a whole episode just on in glyphs, like on Easter Island. The Rongo is a system of glyphs written on pieces of wood found on Easter Island. Several of them were found in the 19th century, and they have since been separated and are housed in various museums and collections. No one has ever been able to decipher what they mean. The symbols include animals, humanoid figures, and plants. It's believed they were carved using a shark's tooth. But the thing is, there's also said to be giants that were once on Easter Island. And who's argue with the big heads, right? So a lot of stuff everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And, with museums, did you know that museums, on average, don't even show 15% of what they own?
That's crazy, isn't it? I did know that they didn't show everything, but that's a very small percentage.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff that's left out...
So a lot of that stuff mysteriously gets lost in the back room.
Oh, yeah.
Or they don't know which museum it's in, or... they just rediscovered it. Absolutely.
And like I said, we're going to put some of these online for you because they're just interesting. They really are. I want to get to something. Of course, we didn't even talk about Vatican City. We didn't talk about the Vatican Library.
Oh, my. Do you think they have copies of all of these missing books?
Here's what
Vatican
I think.
Library?
I don't know if it's actually, a lot of times you have like, the sort of the alien, people think the aliens are here, yet they're actually here.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think maybe Vatican City might be a red herring. Maybe they're somewhere else.
Oh, I see. So everybody focuses and thinking that it's the Vatican City Library.
But if it's still like it was, you have to know exactly what you're looking for.
Exactly.
There's no looking around.
Right. You have to go in. You have to be able to go in, first of all. You have to be credentialed and, give over your firstborn or whatever the things are. And then you have to know exactly what you want to see. Like, you already have to know it's there and ask for it specifically before they'll let you see it. So I wonder how many researchers go in and just throw out names of books just on the off chance.
I don't think it's that easy. But
that they're going to have it.
It'd be a good trial, girl. We'll see you tomorrow.
That's right.
We'll see you tomorrow, Stacey.
Nope. You didn't win today.
Are we going to shoot her or something? Nah, she's cute.
3 strikes and you're out.
Just let her come on back. I get bored around here. I think one of the biggest out of all the fires, and just start looking into that, by the way. You'll get very sad. The Library of Alexandria was one of the ones. And that was like in a line of Library of Alexandria sized places that got burned down.
Right.
For whatever reason. It's not even use going into we talk about it all the time, but there could have been 200,000 documents. I mean, it's just insane. Well, the Library of Alexandria was 300,000 to 500,000 documents. Before that, we lost 200,000 documents. I mean, it's just insanity. Why? If there was some reason, and again, it's the power, because if you control the knowledge, you control the power. And especially if you want to have, and this is not busting on any kind of religion or any religious beliefs or anything, it's really not. It's just on power and controlling that narrative and knowing that you're going to believe what I'm telling you. And it's blasphemous if you don't.
Right.
Just not being able to ask the question. I'm not sure that's right.
Well, unfortunately, they used religion as the cover, like the reason. They used religious beliefs and religion and God as their reasoning for doing all of this. Like, whatever their real reason was to hide, whether it was power or, to hide certain knowledge from people, their reasoning that they told people were, that's blasphemous, or that's, so it sort of gives religion a bad name, sort of.
Yeah, it does. And that's not to take away from anybody's faith or anything like that.
No.
Not a bit. It's just very, there's people, there's man in controlling everything, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever you have man involved.
Men are not perfect.
Not at all. So. And like I said, it's not just the literature, but not just the architecture. We're not even doing that. Mm-hmm. I don't have time. That's my biggest love. Okay, I mean, you can ask Stacey. I'm like waking her up at 5 a.m. going, "You're not gonna believe how old this place is." It's just, it gets me. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to look at the history that of human activity on the planet. Now, we've seen proof of buildings that they really shouldn't be able to build. Mm-hmm. Not for the time period they're saying. But how long can we prove that we've been here in some form or fashion? And when I started looking into that, that's when it got really crazy, because I was like most of you and thinking that it was some slack-jawed, hairy cousin of ours that was doing a lot of this cooking, and then found out that, man, not so much. Not so much. It's just not presented out there to everybody. It's never presented out there to anybody. And there's reasons for it, but there's also hundreds of examples. And one of the books that I was talking about, The Forbidden Archaeology, you guys really need to get into that. Some of the examples I got, this is some good stuff. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Florentino Ameghino, a scientist from Argentina in the 19th century, discovered the Buenos Aires skull. It was an excavation that was 15 meters down and beneath a thick limestone layer. They actually dated this to a time period of around 2.15 to 3.2 million years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a long time.
And I mean human type skull. Mm-hmm. Not
like a Neanderthal.
Right,
or
right.
Like
no,
proper
human skull.
Proper human skull.
In 1926, paleontologist Harold Cook and J.D. Figgins, the director of the Colorado Museum of Natural History at that time, went to the Holloman Gravel Pit in Frederick, Oklahoma. It's a very famous one. where they discovered, amongst other items, projectile points, which are only made by humans like us, according to most sensible archaeologists.
Right.
But they are found under dark red clay layers, then under the brick red clay and sand, and then another level with sands and gravels and large coarse materials, and some of the items all the way down to items beneath the extensive sandstone. In the first layer that human artifacts were found, they found fossils of an extinct four-tusked elephant named Trilophodon,
okay,
which last walked the earth 1.8 million years ago.
Wow.
And these findings have been confirmed by genuine and proper scientists, including, this is a quote, "Every possible objection was raised as to why the artifacts from the Holloman pit could not be as ancient as they seemed. All objections were met and defeated. Even a vociferous critic was forced to concede that the human artifacts were the same age as fossil animals."
Wow.
And that was from the Oklahoman in July 9th, 2017.
I mean, sometimes you just can't dispute it. I mean, if all the evidence is there, and like the first one you're talking about, the skull was underneath a thick limestone layer.
Yeah.
I mean, how long does that take to form?
All this stuff's like this.
So ridiculous.
Keep going. Deep gravel, The Deep Gravel Mine, Waldo, Oregon, owned by the Weimer brothers, had a report from a local newspaper on April 16th, 1904, "Relics of an Ancient Age." It's a really cool little article looking thing, saying they discovered a number of ancient mortars that are from humans 50 to 60 feet down and near the bedrock. The age would have been at least 2.58 million years old.
Wow.
1881, Henry Stopes found a human face carved into a shell found at Walton-on-Naze in the Red Crag, which places this find, because it was in the Red Crag, 2.6 to 3 million years old on the coast of England. In Foxhole, right up the street there in England, also in the Red Crag, was found part of a human jawbone. Tools and weapons around 3 million years old.
Wow.
In Miramar, Argentina again, there was a thigh bone of an extinct South American mammal, Toxodon, with a flint arrowhead embedded in it, 3.2 to 4 million years old.
I mean, you can't dispute that. It's not alongside it or accidentally got near it. It was inside.
Well, they did dispute it. And so the geologist, the guy, he invited everybody in the entire country of repute, like every good scientist, every geologist, out to the site. He said, "All right, you pick where I'm digging." They did. They said, "Okay, you pick here," basically. He digs and finds these bolos, like weapons, and and they date it to 4 million years old. So it made it worse for the guys.
Right, because obviously he didn't plant them there. Because...
Well, that's what they said. They said you went and got a modern, like, Indian.
Right.
With a flint, stuck it in that thing's butt and dug it.
Planted it.
Yeah.
What a horrible thing to accuse your fellow scientists of doing, just because you don't want to admit that the timeline is different.
It happens, my friend. 1979, horrible. Mary Leakey's very famous with the footprints. It can only be human because the feet are unique from the ape-type versions, 3.7 million years old. I'm not going to get into the whole thing. We end up getting the Lucy out of all this eventually, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because everybody wants to fit it into something. When it doesn't fit their paradigm, there's actual quotes out there from people saying, well, if it doesn't fit, basically throw it out.
Right.
And that's saying it quickly, or they create, Hamadamadas. He was a lot like us, except wasn't. But a human skull from Italy found by geologist G. Ragazzoni in a 4 million year old formation. The Crete Footprints, published in a 2017 Geology magazine, published in the Office's Geological magazine, but the scientists who discovered it couldn't believe it was from humans, thus claimed it was from another type, again.
Right.
Bushy boogas. But the feet could only match humans. That was the problem. 5.7 million years old. Only human have human feet. They don't have a thumb that goes out the side of feet. Like a lot of them have the finger feet.
Right. With the opposable toe.
But then there's very famous ones that you see a lot of times. But these are real. These aren't just some cool YouTube video. Virginia City silver mines. They found a human skull coming from 300 feet deep, 14 million years old. In Portugal, hundreds of human tools and weapons found at a depth that made them around 20 million years old. Teeth were found in Germany in 2017, around 9.7 million years old. In Kaliningrad, Russia, a piece of amber with remnants of woven material trapped inside and dating to 44 million years old. Weaving was said to have just begun about 15,000 years ago. This 44 million years old.
And it was in amber?
In amber.
Wow. I mean, you can't fake something in amber.
No,
That's
can't.
not like you planted it thing.
19th century Table Mountain in California during the gold rush. Miners found human bones and artifacts from 50 million years ago based on the depth they were found at. Now, this has been looked at by many, many people. Gold chain found inside coal that was 300 million years old. 300 million.
That's so insane.
Iron pot that was found with a solid chunk. It was inside a solid chunk of coal that was 312 million years old. The famous bell that was found in 1944 in Buchanan, West Virginia, 300 million years old. The coal deposits that it was found in, it's crazy. This bell was really beautiful, and it looks like the Garuda bells from India, like just to say, same designs and everything. Several skeletons have been found all over the place. You can look up some old newspapers, 300 million years old. They've been found in coal deposits. June 5th, 1852, edition of Scientific American tells about this one really got me. This was crazy. You could find this one, the Scientific American one.
Right.
It tells about this beautiful vase that was found inlaid with pure silver, and around the lower part was a vine or a wreath, and it had this exquisite work to it.
Right.
Where it was found, it would have been 600 million years old. Wow. 600 million.
That's just ridiculous. And we're talking about dating it because of what layer of earth it's in.
We're talking you dig down hundreds of feet, go through the most unbelievable bedrock, yes.
Right, because they know, because most scientists agree on how far down you dig,
that's the thing.
how old the dirt is.
They didn't disagree about any of this.
Right.
They're just not putting it in textbooks.
Right. And they're not teaching it like
that's the point I'm making.
That's part of our history.
Yeah, they're finding it. They may label it something different, but they are not disputing that they found this stuff.
Right.
And, or the human bones and this and that, but they want to call it something else. That's not the case. I firmly believe that a lot of these incredible structures are very explainable if you look at it on a broader scope. We haven't done this, justice. It's not our first time around. And it's crazy. Graham Hancock says that we're a species with amnesia. That's a good way of putting it. It's so strange. And you just feel like sometimes that when you look at these, there's no way to explain these structures. There really isn't. And a lot of the ancient, like polygonal masonry, or a lot of the ancient monoliths, and it would take power, and there's actual marks like laser cut precision tools, diamond tip,
right.
That's what it would take. Not to mention the anti-gravity devices to lift some of the stuff, or machinery we don't have.
Well, and when you think about it, to kind of wrap it all together, you were talking about technology and how technology is advancing and how we don't know as much as we used to know. So it kind of puts it into a perspective where, if we were advanced millions of years ago and we built ourselves up and we got the technology and we advanced our technology so far that we relied on it completely, and then something happened, a cataclysm, a comet, whatever, people wouldn't be able to survive without that technology. I mean, they're so resilient on it that, even if something happened right now, we're not even that technologically advanced, but if something happened right now, there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't know what to do. They wouldn't know how to live. They wouldn't be able to make it very long.
So guess who would?
Who's that?
Our hunter-gatherers.
This is true. Our survivalists.
Our hunter-gatherers. They're still on the planet. There are still tribes on this planet.
That's true.
So when we go back in time, and 15, 20,000 years ago, even 12,800 or so, after a cataclysm, and we have these hunter-gatherers that just happen to survive.
Right. That would be why.
It's exactly who would make it right now, because they know how to. The ones that rely on devices and don't know how to hunt or cook or clean or any of that. It's scary. Mm-hmm. It's terrifying to give that much over to machines.
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. Even if you could find a way to scrounge up food, what happens when you get sick if you don't know how to make yourself better? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, it's scary.
And on that terrible disappointment, hope you've enjoyed this special edition of the Paranormal Sideshow. We are going to be back next week, and when we come back this time, we're going to be back with news, back with our fun, back with our stuff. This is a little special deal for you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. For Stacey, I'm John. So long from the Paranormal Sideshow.
Good night.